and welcome to my knitting podcast. My name is Irma and you can find me on YouTube, Ravelry and Instagram as Wolwerkjes. I hope everybody is safe and everybody is healthy, and I hope you will enjoy this episode. So, let me see. I have done quite some knitting. I have done sewing. I have done some spinning, and we will just see where this ship sails. Let me see. I will start with the knitting because that's the main content of this video most of the time, so I just start with that. And I have been working on a few things. So one of the things I have been working on is this really cute rabbit. It will be a present for an old friend of mine. He had a baby. It's not finished yet. The main body is stuffed now. The construction of this pattern is really nice because with the increasing and decreasing you really shape the outer layer of your toy. So with stuffing it automatically takes the shape it needs to be, while with some stuffed animals I think you really have to shape it yourself when stuffing, and when you don't stuff it in the right way it will be really wonky and strange. So it's really nice that this pattern does that for you. Of course you have to be careful because knitwear is stretchy, and when you stuff it you can always misshape things, but I think it was quite intuitive to do so because of the basic shape was so very nice. It needs legs, it needs eyes, which I'm going to embroider on because I tried the safety eyes, but you have to put them on your knitwear before stuffing, and because you really need to make those eye shapes also in the face, it was really hard to do. So I will just put them on after with some basic stitching. And yeah, it should have been done. It's laying around for quite a long time now. There's no need to hurry because the receiving end doesn't know it's coming, but yeah, it would be nice to finish it and send it off. So I've done some other knitting and I basically finished something in the last few weeks. So I made some handspun weeks, maybe months ago. I spun a 3-ply Gotland yarn, and I think the weight was like a sport weight, but it was really difficult to call it a certain weight because it was really densely spun. It was hard to choose a pattern because my yardage was, or meterage was, smaller for what you would expect for the weight of the yarn. So I end up knitting Core by Natasja Hornby. I've knit one of her patterns before. It was the color shawl, which is also featured in one of the Lane magazines. I can't say which issue by heart, but I will look it up for you. I made some alterations. It's an open front cardigan that's really nice. It has a shawl collar, and the construction is really interesting. It's knit in one piece. You start at the neck, and I'm not going to give away things of the pattern, but it's really nice. You really have like a shoulder pad in the construction, so it stays on your shoulders very nice. When I started this I already knew I would be having an issue with the amount of yarn I had, but it was really easy to adjust. So there is no patterning on the body except for some slip stitch details which can be continued or stopped early, so that was quite easy to adjust. So I made it shorter than the pattern called for, and the pattern has 3/4 length sleeves I think, with the same detail as the bottom of the cardigan, but I just didn't have enough yarn for that, so I just did an I-cord edge on the sleeve, and I think I have 1 meter of yarn left, so I really used everything I had, and that was the goal, making something very warm and comfortable with my handspun, with using almost everything I had, and that happened, so that's really, really nice. I finished a sock. I did not use a pattern, I just cast on the normal amount of stitches for my gauge and my foot size, which is 64, I say by heart. I did some 3x1 ribbing. What I did with the ribbing is quite kind of interesting, and I will show you up close. It's a combination knitting, they call it, and what you do is the Western way of knitting, you wrap your yarn
counterclockwise. So what you see me doing is wrapping yarn from the front to the back over the needle, which is counterclockwise, and I basically do all my knit stitches like this, like most people do their knit stitches. But when I come to a purl stitch, I do it the other way around. So instead of wrapping the yarn from the front of the needle to the back of the needle, like I did with the knit stitches, I go from the back to the front clockwise, and this makes a really neat transition between the knit and the purl stitches. So I do all my knit stitches counterclockwise, and I do my purl stitches clockwise. The yarn is a little bit tighter, and that's the way you get a very neat and tidy rib. You can especially see this from the inside, where you normally have looser stitches.
So I did a garter heel flap, which I really like the look of, I have to say. It's really a fun detail, and some decreases for the gussets and a rounded toe, and I'm very happy with how this yarn is. It looks like micro striping. That's because the blue, you have a gray stripe and a blue stripe, which is a full circle, a little bit more, but if you have bigger feet or a looser gauge, you will need a different amount of stitches, so that's why it's a little bit bigger than my foot circumference for 1 row, but you have 1 row of the gray and 1 row of the blue, and that continues, but the blue is not dyed in the same way throughout the stripe, so you have lighter parts and darker parts within the blue stripe, and that gives this micro striping effect, although it is technically a self-striping yarn. So that's really fun. I finished the first one I started ages ago, and I started the second one, which is a really small bit of ribbing at the moment. I haven't touched it in quite a while, but I at least started it. I'm using my hiya. I will put the name on the screen. I can't remember exactly how they're called, but they're basically 3 needles with a little soft bit in the middle, so you can bend them, and that way you only need 3 needles to do knitting in the round, whereas you have the normal DPNs, you need at least 4. I used to having 5 needles to make knitting in the round possible, but because those are flexible, you can do with 3, and it's working fine. Your hands have to get used to the smaller needles, and you have to be careful not to hurt your hands because it's a different way of holding your needles, so you have to be careful with that. But I do enjoy it. It's not my go-to, I think, but I really do like them. And I think I should show my Flax slides. I think you will see this one every time I record until it's finished. I haven't touched it in quite a while. I did make a decision for the sleeves, so I'm going to knit them just straight without decreasing, and will decrease just before the cuff, so it will get like a little poof effect, but not too much, because if you want to really the big poofs, you need to increase stitches. So you have a really lot of fabric just before the cuff, you decrease, and then you have the really big poof effect. But I think that's not necessary for this sweater, but I do like a little bit of that effect, so I'm just knitting my sleeves straight and decrease just before the cuff a lot, and yeah, that's it. And it makes it really mindless knitting, because except for the garter panel on top, you only have to worry about the length and not about stitch pattern or decrease rate or whatever. So it's really easy knitting, and I really enjoy that. As said in earlier episodes, it's a blend of wool from the sheep and llama fibers. Llama fibers are hollow from the inside, so it is a really lightweight sweater, but it will be really good for isolation, so it will be really warm. And I can't wait to finish it and use it when the weather starts to get colder after the summer. So that's all the knitting I have to talk about. So let's get started on the sewing content. And I have quite some things to show you. If you remember the jumpsuit I made a few months ago, I also showed a fabric which was also going to end up as a jumpsuit, but there was no hurry to make it. And my friend got married last week, and I really wanted to wear something special without it being too glamorous or anything. I don't know how to say it differently, but it was just a really small wedding at the city hall with only parents and the witnesses that signed the wedding papers. So yeah, it was just really, really small, but it was nice to be able to wear something special. So let me see. So here it is. Let me see if I can show it in any way. It's a black fabric with white lines and a lot of glitter. I left a trail of glitter all over where I went that day, which was quite fun. Yeah, but it's just like a straight silhouette and puffy legs, and I wore a belt over it to make it a little bit more fitted and not just a baggy thing to wear, but like really making it fitting better. And it was really, really nice to do. I had some issues with making my sewing machine, which is really, really nice, and there are a lot of things possible with it. It has a special stretch stitch. So when you have a standard sewing machine, when you sew stretch fabrics, you normally use a really narrow zigzag stitch. So your fabric is still able to stretch. Because if you just sew a straight line, there is no stretch possible there. So your silhouette of the clothes you make will change. And my sewing machine has a special stretch stitch, which is really secure. So there is no way that will rip when you stretch your fabric when it's sewn together, which can happen when you use a zigzag stitch, but that's another story. So I use this very nice special stretch stitch. But I made a mistake in the seams. It was late and I just was thinking I was sewing the legs together, but I was sewing the top part of the thing together and it was just really bad and a mess, and I had to undo the seams. It is not fun to undo a stretch stitch. It's really secure. I think you can use it without making the end secure. It just stays together, which can be really nice, but was a pain in the to rip out. And it was, I really nicely used a black thread on a black fabric because that makes the seams almost invisible, which is really nice when you're doing everything the way it should be. When you have to unpick or rip out the seam, it's just, it was so bad. So it took me, I was thinking it would be a really quick and nice thing to make, and it took me, I think, double the time to finish it than I anticipated. And also I couldn't avoid ripping the fabric when unpicking the seam because it was so tight and so secure, and same color thread on the same color fabric, it just, I couldn't see it that good. So yeah, I had to mend some holes before the garment was even finished. But it is finished and nobody saw it, and it was all fun. But yeah, it was a fun project with some hiccups. So let's continue to the next sewing thing I have been working on. And this is quite a special thing I have been doing. Okay, it started out with hand woven fabric I made. I don't know if people remember this, or when this is the first time watching it, this is the first time you see it. I have a rigid heddle loom and I wove this fabric. You call this handspun. You have 2 threads of one color and 2 threads of the other color, and you alternate them. So in this case, 2 black, 2 orange, 2 black, 2 orange. So you do that in the warp, so in the long threads of your weaving, and also in the weft in the more narrow lines of your weaving. And this will get you this pattern, which is called handspun, and I made a lot of it. It was my first weaving project and I just want to make a lot of meters with my loom to get to know it. And of course I make mistakes, nobody is perfect. But it was usable fabric, so I was thinking I want to make a garment out of this. I want to cut into it because I know there are mistakes there, but I think it would be less heartbreaking to cut in my first piece than to cut in the first piece that felt perfect to me. So I was like, first weaving thing I made, I'm just going to cut into it to make the cutting into my own fabric less scary. So then I was thinking, what kind of garment do I want, and I ended up deciding that I wanted to make a dress out of it, and I couldn't find a pattern. I had this dress in my wardrobe which I really liked and I think would be suitable for this fabric, but I couldn't find a pattern that was similar enough for me to like it. So I end up placing washi tape over all the pattern pieces from this dress. So just lay my dress flat, or at least the pattern piece I was tracing, lying that piece flat, putting washi tape over it, take it off, put it on some paper and cut it out. And I did that for all the parts of the bodice, and with the skirt I did it a little bit different, but for the bodice I did it this way. And so let me see, this is the front. So you have the v-neck line at the front. This is the side front, and those lines match up really nice. They're the same length. This makes the area for your boobies. And I have the back panel, which I did trace in one go, but my fabric wasn't wide enough to make it in one piece, so I just made it in half and added an extra seam there. So, but because it was the first time for me tracing a pattern like that, I was like, I'm not going to cut into my hand-woven fabric directly. I want to know if it is working before I do that. So what I did is I made a mock-up with a way too short skirt, just because I did not have enough fabric. For the bodice I used 2 layers of this white fabric I had lying around doing nothing, so that's not really see-through. But for the skirt I didn't have enough, and I didn't have a wide enough piece, so there are way too many seams in there, but I had to put a lining in to make it modest, let's say it like that. So I only used scraps for this, so these were all pieces of fabric I had lying around that were from old curtains or from projects that got ripped out because they were not fitting or anything like that. So these are all scraps, and yeah, I'm very happy with it. And because I was trying a new way of making a pattern, I also used this time to think of other techniques I might want to try before doing it on the real garments for the future. So I really finished this, the inside of this garment. I will take close-ups, but the inside of this garment is completely finished with baling stitches, and I put a tape on the top to secure the raw edges at the neckline and stuff. And yeah, I'm very happy that I did it, and I learned a lot from it. And then it was time to go and cut into my real fabric. So I first made the bodice, and I directly, when I started, I knew I wanted to put a lining in, but I didn't want to make the outer piece and the lining piece and then attach them later, because I wanted to give the hand-woven fabric a little bit more structure while sewing. I treated them as one piece of fabric, and I used a white colored thread to finish the raw edges, because I was so afraid that those edges would fray and things like that, that I wanted it to be visible for me that I did secure those raw edges. Normally I only finish my seams after the seams are sewn and pressed, but hand-woven fabric can unravel a little bit more easy than store-bought fabric, so after cutting the pieces out I directly secured all the edges, because how bad would it be that you put it away and leave it for a while and coming back to it and it's all just one big mess of loose threads. So that's why you see the white finishes on the inside. Then I have the skirt part already cut out and sewn together in the same way as the bodice, so just all the pieces together except the seam where the zipper will be, and this will be gathered and made to the same size as the bottom edge of the bodice. It's done in different ways because I have to treat the fabric differently than I'm used to. I have to think better about the order of seaming the dress together than when you have a store-bought pattern where they tell you what the order of sewing is. So it's really challenging, and I'm learning really a lot about it. And it was really scary to start something without a store-bought pattern. I've never done it before, but it was really fun to do. And as I said, you learn so much about garment construction when you have to think about it yourself. You can look things up on the internet, and there are a lot of sources that will help you with the order of sewing. Just the fact that you're doing research and thinking about the order makes you learn so much. So that's really nice. Even if this doesn't turn out the way I wanted to, which can still happen, it learned me so much that I did not regret doing this. So I've also continued my English paper piecing. I made this piece and the center parts that I took the paper out already, so I can reuse that. And I started a second piece with the fabrics in the same way, and I'm doing it this way because I know the same fabrics are distributed nice over the complete item, whatever that will be. But by making the same blocks and attaching those, they will be really nice separated, because I would not like it if, for example, this yellow and blue would be too close together. So that's why I'm doing it this way. And I'm really not sure what it is going to be. Maybe a cushion, or maybe a project bag. That would be also really nice to have a project bag with all those scrappy fabrics. And I can't wait to do a little bit more on this, because this is a really nice project for summer and hot weather, because there's nothing really in your lap. They're all really nice tiny pieces. You can take it with you, so you can do it outside. It's really fun to do. I also have some more weaving. You can see that I use different colors and different threads and different structures in warp and weft. The decisions I made started with this section where you can see the gradient from yellow to purple. That is hand dyed and hand spun silk. So I dyed the silk fiber and then spun it, and I had it in my stash for quite a while, and I tried knitting some things out of it, but it didn't work out really. So I thought I can use it in a weaving project. So I started, when I started warping my loom, I started with striping those hand spun with some white cotton viscose blends, and of course I knew I wasn't able to fill the whole loom with that, so I was anticipating already on making the rest white, so I would have a section of the shawl or the scarf with the stripes, and the rest would be plain. And I started this on this side, so it's better to start over here with showing as well. So that's what happened. I had a little bit of the silk left over, so I striped it in the beginning just to use it up and don't have any leftovers from the silk, which I'm really happy I did it that way. So I striped it in here, and then I just started weaving with a plain white cotton. And when I was starting this, I already was thinking I don't have enough to fill my complete warp. So I put 2.5 meters on my warp, and I was weaving and was feeling like I'm not going to make it with the materials I have, and I don't want to order anything. So I went stash diving and I found this white fluffy yarn which I didn't have any use for, so I just started striping that in as well. And when I advanced, I noticed, well, even with the fluffy yarn and the white cotton, I'm not going to make it. So I went stash diving again, and I found this gray, which is a cotton and some other things blend, and it also has some sequins on there, so it's really glittery and sparkly. And I had some other leftover cottons with the same thickness of thread lying around, so I just started with striping in quite randomly because I didn't want to make a pattern, because I didn't know how much I would get out of each color. So I just started striping things randomly, and at the end I only had the gray left over, and I just finished it with the gray. And when that was all finished, I was just like, well, now I just have to finish my scarf because I can't find anything else that would match with this, and I think I have quite a nice length now. So that's how this ended up the way it is, and I'm very happy with it. And it's really fun that with knitting I normally gravitate to like easy yarns, difficult patterns. Is that the thing to say? So let the stitch pattern define how the fabric is going to look, and not putting different structured yarns together. But with weaving, it's really, when you use only plain grey yarn, you will get a really plain grey piece of cloth, and that's really nice, but not for everything. So I think I will make a really nice grey woven fabric and make a skirt out of it one day or something, but that's not the main reason for weaving for me. It's really fun to explore with colors and textures. What I don't do that much in my knitting is really fun to do in another craft, and for me that is weaving, and it sparks my creativity in a different way, which I really like. Then there's one last thing I want to show, and that is some spinning that has been happening. I'm so happy with how this is turning out. I showed you the blending of this fiber. I started spinning it. It is all spun as a single one and to use as a single. I have one piece still on the bobbin, which will be finished soon, I hope, and then this will get washed and set, so I can make something nice out of it. I'm not sure what I'm going to make, like which pattern or anything, but I think I want to make a shawl or scarf or something for around my neck and shoulders. And this is my favorite. It has almost all the colors in there, and I could make everything out of this color. And it makes me want to blend more fibers together because it's really fun to do, quite relaxing to do, and the effect is just really nice. So I hope you enjoyed watching, and I will see you soon.